Hi everyone, Dredgen here, and today I'll be showing you how I lube my Anne Pro 2 without disassembly or disordering and change the typing sounds from this to this. So the Anne Pro 2 is a pre-built keyboard and it is not hot swappable, meaning you can't pull out the switches from the keyboard without desoldering first. They are soldered into the PCB or the printed circuit board. Now, the prevailing practice in lubing boards like this is first to take it apart, then desolder the switches, take each switch apart, lube the switches, put the switch back together, solder it on the board, then assemble the keyboard. Now, that is a lot of work, not to mention that it requires equipment and experience in soldering. I was hoping to find a way that is more beginner friendly and may serve as a stepping stone to get more people into the hobby. So I looked on the internet for tips, and as usual with things like this, in the mechanical keyboard world, there are a lot of conflicting opinions. Some say it is not worth it, some say it is the worst thing that you could do to your keyboard, while some say it could be around 70 to 80% effective as compared to doing it the proper way. And that was my target. I was not hoping to get something that is 100% as good as a full brush lube, but I was hoping to do something that did not take as much hours but improved it considerably. If I could get 80% effectiveness with 20% of the effort, I'd be okay with that. After researching, I saw 3 methods that were used, and much like I did for myself, I would advise you to pick the one you feel the most comfortable with, as some of these methods may ruin your keyboard if done incorrectly. So do this at your own risk. The most common method that I saw was spraying your keyboard with super lube, and it seems this one is gaining popularity recently. This method required an outdoor space, which I don't have because I live in a condo. Since the lube is sprayed, you may inhale it if you are in an enclosed space. It also required taking out your PCB, so this was a no-go for me. The second method was using a plastic strip to get some lube into your switch and spring. This sounded a bit easy, but I was not sure if it was as effective as I wanted it to be. So I went with the third approach. I decided to brush lube the switch while pushing on the stem. Now here is an illustration of what I was trying to do using a Gateron red switch. This red part here is the stem. It is rectangular. The shorter side of the triangle are where the sliders are, which are the parts that make the most contact between the stem and the switch housing. You will need to lube that with a brush and try to get it between the casing and the stem. You can push the switch a bit to get clearance. You would also need a brush with at least a centimeter tip. If the brush is too thick, you can consider cutting off some of it so it would fit. Though you would need to be careful not to leave brush hairs on the switch. Then, the next part would be lubing the other two sides. As you can see here on this side, the spring is quite visible. You would want to insert the brush here to lube this side and hopefully touch the spring. I was unsure at first if the brush was hitting the spring, but after the process, I think I did get some lube in the springs, as I will show later. So here's what you need. First would be lube. Now a thin lube would be ideal, as we would want the lube to eventually move through the switch. This here is the Krytox 205 grade 0. Now this is quite expensive, so use it sparingly. For this one I got 12 grams for around $10, and this is more than enough. You'll probably just need around 3 grams or so. You would be able to get something quickly online, as there is for sure a mechanical keyboard community somewhere in your country. Have it shipped and you should be good. Second would be a brush. As I mentioned earlier, a thin brush with at least a centimeter tip would be ideal. Third would be a tweezer, or any object that you can push the stem with. When I started, I removed only a few keycaps, as I wanted to test first if what I will be doing will be making a difference. I lubed 3 switches first, then compared it with those that were unlubed. During this first step, I was using the lube sparingly, as you can always add more lube. These were the results that I got. Now, hopefully you could hear, and it's a bit hard to describe, but the lube switches sounded cleaner. You could no longer hear the metal sound of the spring, which is evident when I press the switch slower here. On this first batch, I used very little lube and I ended up adding more eventually. Hopefully you can hear the difference in sound, but the switch and keycap may mask it. So here's one with only the switches. Now this is the amount of lube I eventually used. After lubing two sides, I would usually get a little more to finish the switch. Now I know it does not look elegant, and I may get a lot of hate for this, but hey, it works. Now, you would just need to do that 60 times, which was honestly not quite bad. It should only take you an hour or so, depending on how quick you are with the lubing. Next would be to lube the stabilizers. I actually posted a video on how to do this for stabs that can be removed, but for this one, I used a Wildcat video as a reference. What you would need here is another lube. I'm not sure if Krytox works here, but dielectric grease has worked for me before, so I'm using it now. So for the stabs, you would need to put on some grease on both sides of the stabs. Try to use your tweezer to lift the stabs up and down while you are putting your lube to get more of the moving parts coated. It is quite a bit messy, but you could always clean it up afterwards. The stabilizers sound really good now. Now, after all of this is done, it is time to reassemble everything back together. Sound test time. Since you are not covering the entire switch with lube this way, I wanted to wait at least a day or two before recording another sound test. I also used a different setup to capture the keyboard sound on this one, as I wanted to get the mic closer to the board to get a cleaner audio. Here's the sound test 2 days after lubing. So after lubing, the switches definitely feel smoother and have a cleaner sound. The stabilizers sounded way better after putting in some grease and are very silent. So that's it for this video. Hope it helps you. See you on the next one.